Hello everybody, my name is Chantel and welcome back to Telly's Marine Tales. Now, for the past 5 years, I have been an acting marine biologist, and even though I have been studying, I have pretty much been doing what real marine biologists do. I go out into the field, I work with animals, I collect my data, I come back, analyze my data, write up my reports, etc. And over the past 5 years, I have had some incredible encounters with marine animals while I have been out in the field. So because it's Christmas, I wanted to do a video that was a little bit more fun, a little bit more festive, and today I am going to talk about 5 of my favorite animal encounters that I have had as a marine biologist. So the first encounter I'm going to talk about is a little bit different from the rest because it was the only encounter that didn't take place while I was working in the Seychelles. And for this encounter, I found myself on the Australian coastline in the northeastern section in a small little region called the Whitsundays. Now this area is known for its outstanding natural beauty with turquoise blue waters and white beach sands. But for me, my favorite part of visiting this area was the encounter that we had with a mother humpback whale and her calf. So this time of year is the season where humpback whales migrate through this region. So we had gone out on the boat for the day, really hoping to see whales, and we got so super lucky. We managed to spot a mother humpback whale and her calf not too far away. So our skipper turned off the engine of the boat and we sort of drifted slowly closer to them until we were about 5 to 10 meters away from them. Now this may sound a little close, but you know, you could read the body language of the animal. The mom, she was super relaxed, she was super calm, she wasn't at all frightened or nervous about our presence, and we really just got to share this magical moment with this mother and her calf. They were playing in the water and they had their tails up and they were blowing air through their spouts, and we were so close, and I just felt so connected to these whales, and it was just such a magical experience. So all of the remaining animal encounters that I will talk about took place in the Seychelles, and I was really lucky. I got to do my fieldwork in a very remote part of the Seychelles, and the wildlife here was just beautiful and it was pristine, and I had so many encounters that I really struggled whittling it down to my top 4, but I managed to do so. And the first encounter has to be my first experience with a wild turtle. Now, for those who have been watching my videos from the beginning, you will know that I absolutely love turtles. They are my favorite marine animal, and they're just super amazing. And I had only ever seen them in aquarium settings before. I'd never seen a turtle in the wild. And so we had come to this beautiful area in the Seychelles. The people who work there are so used to turtles because they're everywhere. They have 2 species there, the green turtle and the hawksbill turtle, and they are just very abundant in this region. And I remember the one day we had got on the boat and we had gone to this really shallow area with lots of seagrass beds, and this is where the turtles like to hang out. And somebody on the boat pointed out a turtle, and everybody was like, oh, okay, it's another turtle. And I was like, oh, it's a turtle! And I must have looked like such an idiot because it was just one turtle in this area where they are so abundant, but I just went crazy because it was my first time seeing a turtle in the wild, and it was just incredible. And later on in the day, we actually managed to catch 1 or 2 because in this region, they have a long-term monitoring project. So whenever they see a turtle, they try and catch it, and they tag it, and they weigh it, and they measure it, just so they can keep a track of how the turtles grow in this area, maybe try and get an estimate of how many there are. So we managed to catch 1 or 2, and I got to hold my first wild turtle, and I have a photo here, and you can just see the absolute joy in my face. I was so incredibly happy because it was my first encounter working with a wild turtle, and it is something I will never ever forget. So the next encounter comes in a little bit more on the scary side because we were diving one day and we had an encounter with a bull shark. Now, these are huge sharks, and they are known as one of the most aggressive sharks in the ocean. But the one day we were diving, we were in really shallow waters, about 5 meters deep, and we were measuring coral of all things. Like, it's one of the most boring things you can do. We were swimming around, locating the corals, measuring how much they had grown. And I looked up, and my dive buddy, he was facing me and he was looking behind me. And all of a sudden, his eyes just went super wide and he pointed behind me. And I turned around and I saw this massive bull shark, maybe about 7 meters away. And he just looked like the bully of the ocean. You know, he was 3 meters long, he had this huge thick body, and he was just curious. He wanted to come see who were these strange things making these weird bubbling noises and what were they doing here, because even though we were in really shallow water, we were right next to a drop-off, so we were right next to really deep 20-meter water. So this bull shark had come up from the deep waters onto the shallows. He had heard us, obviously. He sort of circled us once or twice, checking out who we were, and then made his way slowly back down into the deep waters. And I have to admit, it was a bit of a heart-stopping moment. I was a little bit afraid, but mostly I was just in awe of the size of this animal and the majesty of this animal. He was really, really beautiful. But I have to admit that after he went back down into the deep waters, we didn't stick around for much longer. We decided to cut our dive short, head back to the shore, and call it a day. But it is an experience, again, that I will never forget. So the next 2 encounters are dedicated to rays. For those who know about me and about my work, I studied stingrays for my postgraduate work, but I am a lover of all of the flat pancakes in the ocean, so these next 2 encounters are dedicated to them. And the first is to do with one of my study animals, one of the species that I worked on. And it is called a porcupine ray. And it is actually the only species of stingray that doesn't have a spine on its tail. So the way we decided to capture this animal was we would sort of sneak up behind it. It was really camouflaged. It was the same color of the sand. So it really relied on hiding out and staying put in order to escape predators and things. So you could sneak up really, really close behind it, and you would lunge and you would sort of try and grab hold of its tail. And they were really, really clever buggers, because if you missed the first time, they would swim off a couple of meters, flap their wings, create a huge sand plume, disappear inside the sand plume, wait a couple of seconds, and then swim off in the other direction. But despite their cunning escape abilities, we had sort of nailed down the technique, and we managed to catch a bunch of them. But all of the ones that we caught were juveniles. They were really small, maybe about 60 centimeters or so. So they were relatively easy to catch. But I remember the one day it was right at the end of the day, we were walking back to camp. We weren't planning on catching any more stingrays, but we came across the only adult that we ever saw in this area. And it was massive. It was more than 1 meter wide. Its body was hugely thick, and you could see it just weighed so much. So I turned to the guy next to me. His name was Rhett. He was a volunteer. He was helping me catch my stingrays, and he was much stronger than me. So I turned to him and I said, Rhett, please go catch me that adult porcupine ray. So he dropped everything he had, managed to sneak up on this porcupine ray, lunge, grab hold of its tail, and this thing got such a fright that it just took off. And Rhett, bless his soul, managed to hold onto the tail, and he was sort of holding onto this tail, and this thing was swimming through the water, and he was getting dragged through the water. But he managed to hold on, and eventually, probably after about 100 meters or so, the stingray came to rest, and we managed to sort of do our work on it. But we got to Rhett, and his hat had flown off in the background, and his face was wet, and everything was wet, and he had sand everywhere. But he managed to catch me, the only adult porcupine ray. So shout out to you, Rhett. Thank you, and it was probably one of the funniest moments I ever had in the field. I wish we had a camera to capture it, but unfortunately we didn't. But the laughs are still there and the memories are still there. So again, thanks, Rhett. So my last, but definitely not least encounter was with a manta ray. Actually, 2 manta rays. Now, these are very charismatic animals. A lot of people know about them. A lot of people want to dive with them, have dived with them. They're just these beautiful animals, and there's a reason why they are so charismatic. So I was very fortunate because the area that I was doing my fieldwork had a big seasonal aggregation of these animals. So at a certain time of the year, they would be in this region, and every time we would see them in the water, we would free dive with them and try and get a photo of their bellies, of their undersides, because every individual has unique markings. So if you get a photo of their bellies, then you can identify individuals. And again, this can help you figure out how many they are, how often they are there, etc. So we would always free dive with them and try and get these photos. but there were two special encounters that I had. And the first one, I was sort of swimming upright in the water column as I'm standing now, and I was watching this manta ray come towards me, and it came really close, maybe about a meter away, and it started circling me, and I could see its eye, and I was watching it, and I could see that it was watching me, and I could see it thinking. I could see the cogs in its brain turning, and it must have been thinking, I wonder what this thing is. I don't see many of them. I wonder what they're doing here. You know, and you could just see the intelligence and the curiosity of this animal. And it wasn't the only time it happened. I remember another time I was in quite deep water, maybe about 15 meters deep, and there was a manta ray underneath me. So I dove down to try and get to it, but it was too deep. I couldn't quite get there. But I started swimming sort of on top of it, sort of parallel with it, and all of a sudden this manta ray flipped around so that it could see me. And again, I could see its eye, and I could see it watching me and thinking and being curious and asking itself what I am. And they are really just these magical animals that you can get up close to. You can see their eyes, you can have this connection with them, you can see the intelligence, you can see the curiosity, and that is why these two encounters make it onto my list. So that's it. Those are my top 5 encounters with marine animals, and I really hope you enjoyed this video because I had so much fun reminiscing, thinking about all my encounters with marine wildlife, trying to choose my top 5. I really enjoyed it. So please subscribe to my channel, like the video. If you have any marine encounters that you'd like to share with me, please comment down below. You know, for me, having encounters with any wildlife actually is the highlight of my life, and I'd love to read some of your stories, so leave them down below. And until next time, it will probably be after Christmas, so Merry Christmas, season's greetings, and I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day further.